The Blokebusters podcast is proud to be a member of the Podbros Network. You can find us as well as other fine shows such as The Guy Huddle, Language of Bromance, and Dave's Nerd Compendium at podbros.com and on Twitter at Podbros Network. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of the Blokebusters podcast.
Special interview episode of Blokebusters. It's just me by my lonesome today. I had the very good fortune to interview a man by the name of Elliot Diviney, talking about and around his new film that's coming out. Well, I believe it just has come out, called American Rescue Squad. And despite some audio issues that meant I had to do a bit of creative editing, and I'm able to get this episode out to you. So I hope you enjoy, and we hope to have this guy back very soon. So from here on in, the pretty much unedited interview between myself and Mr. Diviney. Alright, well, I am here with Elliot Diviney. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. How about yourself?
I'm alright. I'm okay.
I heard you didn't sleep well last night.
Did not, but well, I'm powering through.
Was that because you were watching my movie?
No,
okay.
It was not.
Okay.
Yes, nothing against your film at all.
Yeah. No, I always love to hear that when people have a sleepless night because of watching my movie. You know, there's a lot of power in that.
Very true. Yeah. So, for those people that don't know yet, could you give us a brief synopsis of the film?
So the story revolves around this superhero named the Taxpayer, who doesn't really have any superpowers, but the government calls upon him to solve all of their problems, and so he's sort of overworked and beaten and bloody and just wants a day off. But there's this evil group called the Alliance, which consists of an evil politician. There's a freeloader, an illegal immigrant, kind of a lot of stereotypes about society, and they kidnap the Taxpayer with the plans of crucifying him in front of a big crowd because everybody just despises the Taxpayer. And so the mayor is left without options, and he is forced to try and find retired superheroes from the 80s known as Common Sense, Personal Responsibility, and Birth Control. And they've all sort of given up. Society has given up on them, so they've sought refuge in the hills, and so the mayor has to track them down and put them into action, and they all together try and rescue the Taxpayer from this evil alliance.
It's almost as if you're trying to get a message across, or something.
Yeah, you could say that. The whole idea is that we could kind of have two different movies going on at the same time. One is this story about good guys fighting bad guys and superheroes, but there's this other sort of subtext that we can't rely on the Taxpayer, which are meant to be taken, out of context as well as sort of a little jab at politics. So we have all of these character names so that the dialogue, so that specific lines in the dialogue can sort of be jabs at government or society.
Yeah, when I was watching it, it was every now and again there would just be another thing that would pop up and be like, okay, I see what he's going for this time.
Yeah, and it's a movie meant to have on at a party while everyone's drunk. But some people are taking it seriously. I think it's just because everybody is so sensitive to politics, and there are certain issues we're not supposed to talk about and not supposed to laugh at, and this movie is sort of a pushback against that. It's sort of an assault on political correctness.
Yeah, that's really cool. You don't see that too often nowadays. Now, I need to ask, what was your reasoning behind turning this into a musical comedy?
So I had a band in college called the Midwest Connection, and nobody listened to it ever, and they shouldn't have. It was a terrible band, but I found that my strength lies in the area where film and music crosses over. That's sort of where I belong, I think, because I'm kind of comfortable in both worlds, but not really totally comfortable alone in either world. So I like to have film and music together because it seems like that's a good fit for me.
Well, yeah, that's nice to see someone being able to blend together two things that they really like. Because I think it comes off when you're watching it. You can see that you're equally having fun with the script and then also with the songwriting. So. Yeah,
and I think in the future, like I said, we didn't intend for people to take this movie seriously, and politics was something we jumped into because we did this 3 years ago, and so we were looking for any sorts of help we could get in the marketing department, and we thought superheroes and politics would be a good way just to maybe catch some people and get some people interested that otherwise wouldn't be.
Well, cool. Now, one thing I had written down here was I really like the way that you can take the title of this film in two different ways.
Sure.
Because obviously there's the American Rescue Squad, as in this is a rescue squad for America. So
yes.
There's a lot of fun seeing that.
A funny story with that, the movie was originally called Problem Solving the Republic. And we had a different poster and different artwork. And we got it to a distributor, and they didn't like that, and they wanted us to pick an A title so that people browsing alphabetically could find us. And so we came up with this big, long list of A titles, and American Rescue Squad just sort of turned out to be everyone's favorite. But I think, in hindsight, it's a good fit, because I think you're right. It can work a couple of different ways.
It was an interesting thing when I started the film and I actually started thinking about the title of it. I was like, that's kind of cool that it was it can be taken two ways, and as you're watching the film, the message definitely could be either one. So
yeah, well, it was kind of tricky, because on the one hand, there's a lot of things about America that my brother and I love. We wrote America and free speech and everything that we love about capitalism, while also complaining and taking shots at everything that we don't like about America and society. Because on paper, it's a really good idea, and if you look at the Founding Fathers and the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, all of that is really impressive. But too much time has passed, and now it seems like everything is corrupt and government is too big, and we're in a lot of trouble.
Yeah. So, did you have any trouble getting the script for this film out at all?
So, because it was such a small independent film, I wrote the script with my brother Adam over one weekend in the summer of 2011. We had been emailing back and forth just about different gags, like, what if we had a superhero called Common Sense? And then what if there was a musical number about welfare? Just all of these little jokes to try and make each other laugh at work. And then we sort of compiled all those and realized that we had enough for a movie. And we just threw it all together that weekend into script form, and we just started shooting in early 2012. We didn't really have to ask anybody. The financing all came from either loans from my parents or credit cards, and so we didn't have to pitch to anybody. We just we assembled the crew and started. That's one of the true benefits, I think, of independent film, is that you don't need to ask permission, and you can make whatever movie you want to. And for better or worse, this is the movie we intended to make.
Yeah, very Kevin Smith-esque.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I imagine Kevin Smith was one of your inspiration behind doing these films and getting into this area of film.
Yes, the whole thing started watching Evening with Kevin Smith, where he just very candidly talks about his experience making movies. I remember one student asked him what would have happened if Clerks didn't make its money back, and he was left with that $28,000 in credit card debt. And he said, well, I probably would have continued working at the convenience store, and years down the road, I would have got all my friends together, got really fucking drunk, and then watched the movie and say, look at this. This is the worst mistake of my life.
Yeah.
I remember hearing that answer, I knew that the worst thing to happen making a film is that it fails and you can watch it for the rest of your life. And so he sort of gave me the courage in the beginning to just jump in and figure it out. And he's sort of been very helpful along the way and sort of bailed me out a couple of times intellectually with other Q&As. Like recently he had one about how he doesn't listen to critics anymore.
Yeah, I'd imagine that a lot of people in his position, if you start listening to critics, then you're going to start changing the way you do things. And
yeah, early on this movie, I would just really beat myself up over a bad review or somebody that didn't like it or somebody that didn't get it. But Kevin Smith, in one of his answers, explains that this is an art form and it's self-expression, and you can't really fail at that. You know, there's not a right or wrong. There's not winning and losing. It's art.
Yeah, it's one of those things that I know a lot of people don't fully get, especially people that aren't that into film. They don't see it as art. They just see it as the same thing as Saturday morning cartoons are exactly the same as a Studio Ghibli film. It's like,
right? Not
really.
Yeah,
bit more to it than that.
Exactly. Yeah, it's way more intricate than you would ever think. But it's so great that I grew up with YouTube when I was getting into filmmaking and able to look up interviews from all of the people that I admired. So Kevin Smith and Robert Rodriguez and Trey and Matt and Richard Linklater, and all of those folks are very candid and open about their experiences and very encouraging to young people. And so you can find interviews online, your favorite filmmakers, and drawing inspiration from them.
Yeah, I mean, I know that I probably wouldn't be doing podcasting if it wasn't for listening to other people doing it and then listening to other people talking about starting up, because it's just something that you might always think, oh, you know, that could be fun, but until you actually then look into it and then just start, you're always going to be dragging your heels a bit. Alright, so obviously you guys seem to have a lot of fun making the film, but one question that I always love hearing the answer to: what was the most difficult day on this film?
That's an easy one. We were doing 4-day weekends throughout the month of, I think, March in 2012. So Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. On the, I think it was the fourth and final weekend, all of our camera gear got stolen Thursday night out of the camera guy's car. So $20,000 worth of lenses and cameras. And so we still had 3 more days of shooting, and everything was scheduled. We had all our locations and all our actors. But we sort of had to scramble and find new cameras and keep going, and we were already just really beat up from a hard schedule, and we were sort of racing through production. But I think it's sort of, we made it work, and it's one of those examples of what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, and I think we all sort of bonded together after that moment. You know, there's sort of that sink or swim moment where it's like, well, what do we do? Do we call off the production? You know, we're 75% of the way through. We're almost done. And we found another camera and just kept going. And I think it was a real learning experience for all of us.
Yeah. Wow. That sucks.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. There was a film called Food Fight ages ago where halfway through their production, the entire hard drive got stolen.
Oh,
so
no.
They had to start again from scratch. Although apparently it didn't. It was an animated film, and they didn't steal the hard drive which had the voice actors on it.
Oh, okay.
They just stole the hard drive that had all of the animation work done on it.
Oh, that's terrible. It happened to me on an earlier movie. There was a series of films that my brother Adam and I made here in our parents' basement called Pong Wars. It was just a series of short films about ping pong with different kind of Star Wars and Matrix parodies built in, all sorts of special effects, whatnot. And we had this whole feature film, a Pong Wars movie that we had shot about half of it on mini DV, and then had people coming in from Germany, exchange students, and all of our friends, all these costumes, and then figured out that all of the DV tapes were distorted. And so we scrapped it, and we just started over with a new project. And so even though on this one that all our gear was stolen, the footage was okay. And so I think that because of that, we were able to keep moving forward. But yeah, if the footage had been gone, I might not be standing here today.
Yeah, well, it's a good thing that the footage was not gone then.
Yes, yeah. I mean, it's like making an independent film is the hardest thing that anybody can do, and then trying to do that while all your shit's getting stolen is just like that's the biggest kick in the nuts there is.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I also want to know, like, how do people know that stuff is in there and that they can get it?
So we were in Minneapolis filming all day the big fight scene with birth control, and then we sort of parted ways at the end of the day, and some of the group went out for a beer, including the camera guy, and we think maybe somebody saw us loading the stuff at the one location and like followed them over to the bar. It was in Uptown. Or I don't know, it's like maybe some sort of an inside job, or maybe it was like a rival filmmaker, or maybe like a religious group that had got a hold of the script. Who knows? And then it was like we're big fans of Jackass and how they're always pranking each other on set and playing jokes and things like that. And we thought this was a joke when we first heard it, because one of our guys called us and said all the gear got stolen, and we're like, no way, you're pranking us, that's a joke. And so it took a good, I think, probably 15 minutes or a half hour before we came to terms with the fact that it had really happened.
Wow, yeah, I mean, that's what you're basically saying. Well, there's one credit card gone, on to the next.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's like, once you're in a bunch of debt, it's like, what's the difference? let's just tack another zero onto the end of that. It'll be fine.
Yeah, I guess once you reach the point where it's like, well, I don't know how I'm paying this bit back. May as well get more.
Yes. I mean, and that was the nice thing, is my parents were sort of there to back me up, and like I said, it was all financed by either Visa or Diviney's, and so there weren't too many people that we had to go and apologize to.
Wow. Right. So, coming off this film just a little bit then, so what would you say are like your top 2 or 3 films that have inspired you in filmmaking?
Yeah, The Matrix is my favorite movie, and I remember seeing that in '99 and wanting to become a filmmaker. I had sort of been doing it in my parents' basement with my brother and with friends, just making little movies and things. But when I saw The Matrix, I knew I wanted to be more involved in movies and try and become a director, because that sitting in the theater watching The Matrix was such a vivid, rich, new experience that I didn't know was possible in the theater.
And then, of course, actually, The Matrix is what really pushed DVDs as well, because everyone wanted all those special features.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was the first in line to get that Matrix DVD. The other 2, I would say Indiana Jones and Back to the Future.
Okay.
I think I really like those kinds of 80s fun blockbuster summer adventure movies that, they don't take themselves too seriously. They're not too dark. They're a lot of fun, a lot of good action. They're just great movies, and I don't think we get that anymore. Everything now is really moody and emotional and dark, and those films were more kind of innocent and lighthearted, and especially as a kid, they were fun to get into.
Yeah, definitely. I think Back to the Future is my favorite film from the 80s. That time period. The whole trilogy I enjoy.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things I do like to do is slightly pick apart how some of the things work in it. But that's all part of enjoying film in my book.
Exactly, yeah. I think you're encouraged to do that.
Yeah, it's always one of those things of when I'm watching a film, my mind is always kind of going. I've reached a point where I can sit down and watch a film, and if it's close enough to your standard Hollywood film, I know how it's going to go.
Yes.
Which actually was one thing I enjoyed about this film, is I figured that when you get towards the end there might be a nice resolution and all that, but I didn't know how it was going to end. So it was fun.
And I'm sort of a sucker for a happy ending. I think we all have enough troubles in our lives that movies are most important to kind of pick us back up and encourage us and leave us smiling at the end of the movie. A lot of movies don't. A lot of movies you leave the theater really depressed and kind of heartbroken. So it was important to me to have a happy ending to this thing after all that we had sort of put the audience through.
So you didn't quite want to make it into 7 then?
No. I mean, maybe there's another movie for that somewhere down the line, but it wasn't this one. Yeah, we could have just gone through with the taxpayer execution and called it a day, and that would have been really interesting. But I needed to have my happy ending.
Well, maybe next time you could have that, and then do some sort of Deus Ex Machina where it turns out that wasn't what happened. And
yeah,
so
well, that's the back to Kevin Smith. I'm writing a bunch of new scripts now that I'm hoping to sell or hoping to make, and they're all sort of intertwined in the same world. You know, much the way that Tarantino's world or Kevin Smith's world, they interchange characters and storylines, and so
you'd
it's
have
possible.
Your own viewer's universe.
Exactly, and in this world, you know, I'm sure time travel is possible, and I'm sure there are aliens and sci-fi and all sorts of things, clones, you know, and any number of ways to go back and sort of rewrite the history of the movie.
All right, okay, well that'll be interesting to see where you get to go with that.
Yeah, excited.
So, what would you say is your favorite part of the film, or is there a scene or even just a line or something that is your favorite part?
Yeah, I think the part that makes me laugh the hardest is when the heroes are all having their meeting trying to figure out how to go into the final act, and Mrs. Responsibility, the mothers of one of the superheroes, comes in and sort of just acts like a typical mother. And that I really like that part because it's not taking any jabs, it's not taking a political stance, it's just a very kind of harmless, universal joke about you're never too old to escape your mother's wrath.
Yeah,
and she and that character was very much inspired by our mother, who was kind of always telling us, you know, don't leave without a scarf, or, you know, don't drink before you go swimming. All these kind of warnings. And so that part always really makes me laugh because it's this really tough and strong superhero that kind of gets cut down to size by his mother.
Yeah, and I think the line from that I liked as well was that even though he is Mr. Personal Responsibility, he still can't clean up his own room.
Right, he's still got a messy room. But it's funny that we take a lot of flack for this movie being racist against black people when the two most responsible, ethical people in the movie are black. So it's like, it's weird that on these very sensitive issues, people just like have an immediate reaction when they hear a joke or they see something. And part of that with this movie was kind of having fun with that. You know, it's like once the knife's in, we like to twist it a little bit.
Well, so you're having trouble with people saying the film is racist when part of the joke in the film is that to be politically correct, the government needed a black agent.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I get that. I think people just don't see the joke.
Yeah, right. I think that's exactly right. And part of it, again, this is our expression. This is what politics looks like to us. And so if people don't get it or don't like it or don't understand it, that's okay.
Yeah, not everyone is going to enjoy this film. I know a couple of people that don't really like meta humor, so this film would not be for them.
Mm-hmm.
But
and this is like over the top meta. Yeah,
which is always fun, and it does need to be done. If you're going to go over the top meta, then it needs to not take itself seriously at all. Which is
absolutely, did. And I think like I heard in '86 when Ferris Bueller came out and he started talking to the audience, that was really jarring back then. But now I think movie audiences are so sophisticated and so in tune with movies and the connection with the audience that you can really throw anything at them in terms of the fourth wall.
Yeah. I would say one of my favorite examples of fourth wall breaking is actually from the House of Cards.
Oh, yes.
With Kevin Spacey.
Yes, that's an amazing show.
Yeah, I've always enjoyed meta humor. I don't know if it comes from my love of Monty Python.
Yes, probably.
But yeah, anything that's meta, as long as it's done well, anything that's meta is always fine by me.
And like you said, it can't take itself too seriously.
No, I mean I prefer if no one took themselves too seriously. But
yeah, right.
And that's not going to happen.
I think that's sort of the main idea behind this movie is, hey, everyone in politics, stop taking yourselves so seriously. That's the message of this movie. It's like, hey, just chill out. Yeah. Have a laugh.
Yeah, I did. I did figure that you guys probably wrote this before 2012, given that the guy is running for office in 2012. So
yes, yeah, but it all sort of works out because the next election cycle is just around the corner, and they're arguing about all the same shit, and we're now getting $1 billion Vikings stadium paid for by the taxpayers. So there's a scene movie with the Vikings owner, beating up the taxpayer about building him a stadium. So many things in the movie are still relevant 3 years later. It's great.
Yeah, that's really nice timing.
Yeah. So I mean, that's sort of an example how nothing ever changes in politics. It's just the same debate over and over and over again. We never really solve anything.
Yeah. So as you were saying, that nothing ever really changes. When I was watching the film and the guy was standing up and giving his speech, and I was thinking, so did you decide to go back and watch speeches for the last 50 years, or did you go on the assumption, which is 100% true, that every politician gives the exact same speech aimed at their audience?
Yeah, I think part of it was we were writing the script in one weekend, and so Adam and I, for 2 or 3 days, were in the office at our parents' house, just taking turns on the keyboard. So he would write a scene, and then he would sit back and have a beer, and I would write a scene. And part of it was we were just rushed on that deadline, and so I think it came time to write Pansy's speech, and I just raced through it. But it came very naturally because, like you said, it's sort of the same as every other politician's speech ever. You just put in these little sort of talking points and an occasional "God bless America," and you're good to go.
Yeah, it's interesting because, it's difficult to have a jab at the speeches by writing them because either it looks like you're parodying the latest politician, because they're all so similar, or it looks like you're genuinely trying to write the script when you're just making fun of it.
Yeah.
And also, I guess what would be telling, given obviously South Park, big draw for you guys, they did the episode when either Obama was going to be elected or the other guy, and they wrote the exact same speech for both. And it was
I didn't know that. That's funny.
Yeah, I think they wrote the exact same speech for both, and then they were going to change like 2 words, and then whoever won, I think their episode was up the next day, they just played that clip, and it turned out that the speech that Obama gave was almost word for word what he gave in the show.
Oh, wow.
It's really difficult to write a silly script that isn't true in some way.
Yes. But it's, and we wanted to also show the sort of dumb mob mentality. So in this guy's speech, he sort of gets them riled up and gets them cheering and booing for different things. And it sort of seems like that's what happens when you get a political rally. You get a bunch of like-minded people together, and then the person next to them starts cheering. They start cheering too. It's like a standing ovation.
Yeah, it is really difficult when it comes to giant crowds and that.
Yeah.
I always think that politicians should almost just do it on TV with no audience.
Right.
Because then it's just the people sitting at home by themselves that make the decision rather than everyone in a giant group doing it. So. Yeah.
And it seems like a problem that now it really just the guy that wins is the one that looks more calm and collected on TV when they're in a debate or talking. We sort of just pick this most suave, best looking, best talking person, and the politics sort of take a back seat to what he's wearing and what he looks like and how long he thinks before he answers the questions. So everyone is so, I think, in tune and focused on what they see, then no one's really listening to what they hear.
Well, the perfect example of that, I can't remember which president it is, because not growing up in America, I don't know my president very well. But Eddie Izzard points out that there was a president that went to Berlin, stood up on a podium talking to the people, and then he goes, "Ich bin ein Berliner," and the crowd goes mental. And then Eddie Izzard pointed out that Berliner is a brand of donut. So he actually stood up and said, "I am a donut."
I believe that. I believe that was JFK, and I believe it got its own Simpsons parody.
Probably, yeah. Ich bin ein Springfield.
Yeah.
It's always really interesting to see that people are so swayed by how things look and how confident people are rather than the actual message.
Absolutely, yeah. And we that's all, I think, sort of just ingrained into us. We're like the animals. We like to have a pack leader. We like to follow. We like to have somebody in charge that we believe in and that we think is cool and confident and collected. And that politics sort of plays on that primal part of your brain that wants to be a part of the group. Yes. Just like sports teams, you know?
All right, well, if you had one message that you wanted to leave with people either before they saw the film or you want them to leave with afterwards, what would it be?
There was one really good review we got that said, "Leave your political viewpoints at the door, and you'll have a great time." And I think that's, if I could be there to introduce this movie to everybody that watches it, that's what I would say. And that's kind of what we were trying to do we have a little tip of the hat to Trey and Matt at the beginning of the film, hoping that people would see that and sort of change their expectations a little bit going into the movie. You know, you have to kind of lower your inhibitions to enjoy this movie because I think you're almost guaranteed to be offended at one point or another. But my brother Adam and I, we don't get offended. It's like we don't belong to any groups. We're not sacred to. There's nothing sacred that we have to stay true to. And so this was really a fun exploration. And so the message is just sit back and laugh and realize how ridiculous the whole political system is.
Yep, that's a fairly good message. I'm on board with that one.
And if I can take it one step further, it's okay to have your own viewpoints. You don't have to fall in line with the political party. You know, it's okay to make up your mind and take every issue and just think about it. I think that's a big problem, that everyone has some religion or some group or some party that they're taking orders from or that they've associated themselves with, and then they just blindly follow those mandates and decisions. But I just encourage everyone to think, question.
Yeah, well, you might have just alienated a whole bunch of people there, but good idea. Yeah. All right, well, thank you very much for agreeing to this.
Yes, and it's I'm not saying you can't be part of a group or have a religion, but it's okay to question those ideas. That's part of being a human being.
Yeah, and I do think that that's a large part of what films like these are for as well. The idea just to make you think and make sure that your beliefs are true to you.
It's like we're independent filmmakers. The dialogue between the filmmaker and the audience is a very delicate one, and one that takes sort of a long time to figure out. And I think we're sort of very early in our career, and we're still trying to master that dialogue with the audience. And this was just sort of a stepping stone in the right direction, I think.
All right. Well, thank you very much for agreeing to do this.
Oh, thank you for having me. This was a blast. I wish we could go longer.
Me too. I'll tell you what.
When you get some sleep.
Yes. Maybe I'll go have a nap. I don't know.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, I'll tell you what. When your next film comes out, you need to come back.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
I would love to. Like I said, I got a bunch of scripts written and ready to go. I'm just kind of waiting to see who's going to finance the next one because I'm not doing it anymore.
Are you sure you don't want to go even further down the rabbit hole?
There's no more room in my wallet for credit cards.
All right.
Completely stuffed. It won't even fit in my back pocket anymore.
That's a shame.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Yes. Oh, thanks for having me.